Welcome to Koffee Talks, a Pokémon card collecting podcast, featuring David Person, owner of the world's most complete English Pokémon card collection, and Dan Norton, a longtime collector with all the knowledge behind the cards.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Welcome to another Koffee Talks podcast. I'm here, as usual, with David, and not as usual, with Alex from Nostalgia Nomics. So both of you, how have your weeks been? How's everything going with you guys? David, you can start, I guess. How's your week been, David, if you remember it?
All right, Dan, fine. I just thought, they usually, you let the guest go first, but I guess we'll just throw all protocol out of the way and we'll just jump right in. Hello, Dan. Hello, Alex. It's David. I'm here. We're doing a podcast. It's Sunday morning. Accidentally, I slept in this morning. I'm not proud of it. So I had to really get running. When I looked at the clock, it was like 9:40, and I said, oh my goodness, we got something going on in 20 minutes. And that I'm going to blame on one of Alex's friends. His name is Josh Archibald. And so you see, Josh, who is the owner, purveyor, the person that runs the Old Card Shop, is in town for the Old Card Show in Vegas. And so we got together last night, and that guy was just plowing them one after another, just drinking like a sieve. And so I'm like, I got to keep up with this guy. And so he basically... And then they were counting like 2-for-1s, like he and his fiancee, Sarah. She's like, another lemon drop, please. She was slurring at the end. They basically knew her order by heart. And so I'm so over the top drunk. I'm just recovering. We had a great time. It was really nice to see those guys. And so I love when we have someone on the podcast like Alex, because I get to make another new friend. And when he comes to Vegas, we'll get him sloshed as well. So.
I did see that you were on the Old Card Shop podcast this week as well, David. I'll make sure to throw a link to that in the description of this one so people can go and watch you over there. So, Alex, how's your week been? Or more than a week, I guess.
Yeah, like I was telling you guys before the podcast started, it's an honor to be on camera with you guys, like just be able to talk with both of you. I've been in the hobby a long time, and I've always known who both of you are. Your knowledge and collections and everything, things you've done in the space just speak for themselves. So it's an honor to be here.
Well, it's definitely an undeserved honor because we're just two people. We're just here collecting.
Yeah, we're just two people doing our thing. No question about it. Dan, this is the point where you talk about your week. Okay, tell us what you did, because you always sort of are kind enough to ask when all you really want to do is tell everybody in the world what you did. So what's going on, Dan?
I didn't do a ton this week. I may have not even left the house this week. I've just been sorting cards and working on stuff. I found out some new variants that we now need to chase. I'll definitely talk to you about that later, David. We'll maybe mention it in a future podcast where we don't have a guest on. It's just annoying tiny variants that I didn't know about before. It's been one of those weeks.
Okay. Well, you know what? I shouldn't give up the surprise, but I've been informed by small flight angels that you're going to be traveling here within the next month or so, and so we get to do those variants in person, and I can find out if you've accounted for your time as in the proper way. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I did get that flight booked. I'm coming out to visit you next week.
Yes, yeah, very good. So I know we got a lot to talk about Alex, to talk with Alex about, because we don't know a darn thing about the guy, and I'm putting him through the ringer. I wasn't planning on it, but some friends of his have told me I've got like a set of questions to sort of like really challenge who he is as a person, as a human being, as a collector, as an investor. So this will be fun. Really, I might have woken up on the wrong side of the bed. And here's the thing. Before we do that, we got to do something real quick. So we're going to do our giveaway. Well, first I got to say one thing, because some people are wondering, and that's just the fact that if you guys haven't seen, the big news this week is that Rusty, TCA Gaming, posted that one of my pre-release Raichus went to Rusty. So a big congrats to him. I as I said in when I posted, it couldn't have gone to a better hobby ambassador. And so, as you guys know, I really only have one. I'm looking for one of everything in my collection. And so having a second was not necessary. And he's something he's wanted for a lot of years. And so I was glad to be able to make that happen. And I'm always pleased. Rusty's just been a wonderful supporter of me for a lot of years. So secondarily, Yes?
I did say on to Rusty on his post that if it couldn't be me getting the extra Raichu off you, I'm glad it was him.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And Dan, you can inherit mine someday. Just I hope to live a tremendously long time. So
That's on camera. That's on record now.
okay. Yeah.
I'm taking that to a lawyer when you go.
God, it's funny. Ever since the E4 thing, you've been a whole different person, man. You've got that guy in your back pocket just waiting for the next controversy to come up. I don't know about you, Dan. You're very quick study. And by the way, do something with the hair soon, because as I look at it now, I realize it's really there is no pink. There's no pink left.
Yeah, I was expecting the bright pink hair today. I'm a little disappointed, I'm going to tell you.
Yes.
I'll get it done. I'll get it done before I come out to Vegas. I did just redo the sides today. Got those shaved down, but I will get the pink mohawk will be in full effect when I come out to Vegas, I promise.
Yeah, and you know what's sad right now is I look at the screen, which I really don't do that often, but sitting between us, like you got the old guy ready to, hit it to get 6 foot under, and then you got the guy that you really not something you want to look at, and then right in between them, you got like model stud Alex, who's basically, like Modelomics. He's like Modelomics, you understand? He's like, they're basically paying him for his presence in videos just because young ladies, which are a big demographic of the hobby now with the waifu issue, they love to look at him. So it's good stuff. It's good.
Wait,
stuff.
we're being paid for this?
You know what? I don't know anything about it. You got to talk to Dan. I just get on there once in a while. I don't know nothing.
I saw that when Alex did put our podcast on his channel, his chat was referring to me as Beaker from the Muppets. So I'll take that. Could be worse.
So I do not lie. Good, great, good news. All right, look, we got to get to Alex. So listen, number one, we did a giveaway last week, and if you guys remember how this works is you have to take the information that happens during the podcast, which means you got to watch us talk to Alex. If you don't, that's on you. And you got to give that information to me by jumping, sliding, or slipping into my DMs and put the name of the character and the number of the character, and then you are entered in the drawing. And then if you share the podcast or anything from my Instagram that you see posted during the week, if you have also commented and you share that, I did that too quick. You also have to comment on the video. So give the numbers, the information, comment on the video. Do not put the numbers and the information in the comments. We don't want anybody to know. It's a secret. But if you do all that or you repost one of my Instagram stories, you get an extra drawing for the week and drawing entry. And guess what? That's exactly what happened this week. As I listed everybody out, Mr. Chris Ondo, he had a second entry because he reposted, and that was the one that ended up winning. So, nice. That was cool. So Chris Ondo, you've got something coming to you. If I decide to send it, I probably won't send it. There's no chance you're going to ever get it. But on public record, I'm saying you're probably going to receive something from me before you leave the hobby.
Have you even messaged Chris to get his address yet, or are you just saying that?
What?
Have you even messaged him to get his address yet to send something out?
No, I don't have his address. Because I don't. Yeah, I only message if I'm probably going to send something out. So, right. Okay, so that was that, and then this week the information that we're going to give you will be later in the podcast. So listen intently, and you'll see if we can get the information. Okay, Alex, it's time that this is all the nice little sugar-coated, buy a donut on Sunday morning, munch it down, and feel good about yourself. But Alex, what's the deal, buddy? What can you tell us about Alex at Nostalgia Nomics? And give us a bit about your background, who you are, and who you expect to be like within the next 5 to 17 years.
Man, I just like anyone else. I was in a hobby as a kid. I was like 9 or 10 years old or something in 99, 2000. And, just loved everything about Pokemon. Like I was kind of the Pokemaniac, I guess, of my friend group. I had, the most cards. I played the games the most. I, knew more than pretty much anyone, like my kind of close circle about it. And kind of like everyone else, I started getting into middle school. It stopped becoming as cool and kind of fell out of the hobby in the early 2000s and refound it back in 2015. And it was before Pokemon Go. It was before Evolutions. It was really just, I was running a lawn care landscaping company, for myself. And I was just kind of looking for, older stuff that I remembered as a kid. Now that I was older, I could, just kind of go back and buy stuff. And I started out buying like old game systems. Like I bought an NES and a Sega Genesis and N64 and all that stuff. And then I started remembering like Pokemon cards. So the first things I bought were the base Jungle Fossil sets. And back then, no one knew what they were doing. So you'd get a base set in, there'd be first edition, there'd be Shadowless in there. It'd all be mixed up. Like, everyone was just kind of, still kind of, that hobby wasn't optimized, I guess is what you could say. And I just started collecting, just started literally just collecting things I liked. I moved into collecting the sealed product, and Pokemon Go came out, everything went crazy. Evolutions came out, and I started opening more product than I ever had in my life with that. And it was just around that time where I started realizing, so a lot of stuff I'd been buying for the past year and a half was now worth more than when I paid for it. And it kind of like clicked in my head, hey, maybe a ton more people are going to keep doing what I did when they keep getting older. Maybe I should start buying, the stuff in more mass and putting it away. It might continue to rise in value, and kind of where investing came from.
So Alex, when you jump back in, what was your major interest? Was it to sort of restart your collection, or was it, as you mentioned, more monetarily driven, and you're like, hey, I should turn this stuff into an investment and turn it over? And what was your thinking at that time?
For the first year and a half, I was just spending money. It was no investment thoughts were being thought of. I didn't know it was even a thing to invest in anything other than like, the stock market or something. And no, it was just strictly a collection pieces. I was buying things I remember as a kid, buying things that I couldn't get, or my parents didn't get me as a kid. And, then finding things I didn't even know existed, trying to complete certain like sealed product lines or certain sets. And it was really just pure collection.
And what did you do to, were you working at the time? Like, how did you supply, when you say spending money and all that, where did the budget come from?
Yeah, so I owned a lawn care and landscaping company, which I operated. It was just me and another full-time guy, and I had 2 part-time guys working for me. So not a gigantic company, but it provided a decent living. And so me and my fiance at the time, now my wife, we don't have kids or anything, so we had a pretty decent amount of disposable income to throw at it.
So Dan, I hope you're listening. I mean, this is Dan. I don't even care if you say anything at all. I just want you to listen, all right? The guy had a job. That's starting point one. Figure that out, buddy. That'll give you more disposable income. The guy didn't have any kids, Dan. Don't rush in, no matter what Laura's family says. And and just you do you, Dan. You're doing great, buddy. Okay. So Alex, what you still have the company, or you don't have the company? What's happened with the lawn care business?
Man, I finally just got so burnt out with it. It's just, there's just so much going into those labor businesses. And it was I grew it to the point where it was either like grow to that next level and really start putting on, multiple trucks, multiple crews, or kind of sell it, because I was at the absolute max I could handle. Just work during the season. I was working at least 80, 100 hours. It was crazy. And so I ended up just selling the company. And from there, I had a couple of different sales jobs before doing what I'm doing now, which is, all the Pokemon YouTube type stuff.
So is this now full time for you?
Sort of. Like last year, I finally left my last sales job I was at, where I was making really good money, but I just really wasn't happy. It was a lot of nights, a lot of weekends, taking away from time with my wife. And so, I jumped in later last year. And I figure, I'm gonna give this a good 6 months a year and really try to ramp things up and see what I can make out of it. So currently, yes, it is full time. Could it go back to not full time? Absolutely. We're just seeing where the road takes us.
Okay. And so what is the priority as far as how you'd like the road to take you? Is it now? I know the podcast. We're gonna get into that, but there seem to be, in investment related, of course, whenever you tack Nomics at the end of your name. But is it, what do you do? Talk about your collection. Do you collect? Is it all now a flipping kind of business? Do you buy anything? Are you just doing the investment side? What does daily life look like for you?
Yeah, It's definitely got a lot harder going full time. It got a lot harder, honestly, ever back since like 2016 time. Whenever it finally clicks that this is about there's an investment vehicle to this, or you can make money doing this. It already kind of jades your thinking of that pure collector that you were, and then now it's even worse having to take an income from the business. But yeah, absolutely. You're always a collector. So like, some of the stuff you see behind me, like I'm not selling any of my old Game Boy games or any of that. There are, certain things in my collection I don't sell. And then like going forward, when I'm grading like large amounts of cards, like say I grade 10 of the same copy of a card. Well, there's a good chance that I can sell a lot of those and maybe keep one in my collection and still make money and still, be able to run the business and things. And so I do try to put back a few cards out of every PSA order I get back. If I buy out large collections or large lots, and either stuff in there I want, I try to make sure the money makes sense where I can, flip the rest of it, still make a profit, still run the business, pay the bills, and still be able to put some away. So I do my best to still collect. As far as a sealed product goes, like that's where most of the investing comes in, putting sealed product away. But, that helps because I just crack one of every case and I put one of the boxes on my shelf, and I like to collect one of every box. So it's easy to kind of, a lot of it kind of overlaps, but it definitely isn't one of those things where all my money goes towards collecting and I can keep everything I buy. About 90% of everything I buy does get flipped.
And when you talk about, you said, hey, when I grade 10 cards or whatever like that, where are you acquiring, are those 10 cards, how are you acquiring them? How do you sell them? And do you ever talk about them in your podcast?
Yeah, so pretty much everywhere, TCG Player, eBay, and then obviously best is going to be like local card shops or going to conventions like shows and collecticons and stuff, because when you can pick up the card in person and you're able to really look over it, especially if you've been doing it a long time, you know what to look for. Your PSA 10 rate's going to be so much higher than just looking off pictures on eBay or buying sight unseen near mint on TCG Player. So how I try to break it down is anything on TCG Player, anything like it's going to be like lower end, like under $20 cards. So if it's like a $5 card that if it gets a 10, it might sell for anywhere from $50 to $90 or something. I'll buy bulk on there and send what's gradable in, sell the rest back as near mint and kind of just recoup the money. And then the higher end stuff I do like to pick up in person, like the higher end, whether it be alt arts or tag teams or XY full arts or special illustration rares. I do like to look at those in person in local card shops and conventions. And yeah, I mean, just kind of I guess the same thing everyone else does, try to only send 10s and the 9s kind of break even. Maybe you lose a little bit, and the 10s, hopefully you're making enough to where you can keep the business running type thing.
So when you're
Go ahead, Dan.
So when you're, picking stuff out from these returns for your own collection, are there certain Pokemon or certain types of cards you're looking for? Or is it just, when you get some stuff back, if you'll just look through and if there's one or two catch your eye, you'll go for it rather than it being, a certain type of card?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, like a lot of the stuff that I send, I guess maybe it's because I don't know, I guess just normal or whatever you could call it, that I like a lot of things that are popular. So, a lot of them are the big three or the Mewtwo's and Mews or, the popular stuff. So luckily a lot of the stuff that I grade that sells well in the market and has good margins, I also like the cards. So yeah, if I'm sending 5, 8, 10 of the same copy and I get enough of them back and I can, still make money and keep one, I usually do. So like, I don't know, recently in my last submission, I was able to keep some of the Ultra Premium Collection promos from 151.
Oh, nice.
I got like, the Shining Legends, Mewtwo GX up there.
Yeah.
Just things like that. Yeah.
I saw Mewtwo, and then is that Base Blastoise, and there's
Base Blastoise I've had for a long time, but like I didn't grade that myself. So
yeah, it looks like there's a reverse holo card graded next to the cereal box, but there's no way on that camera I can see what that is.
That's the Silver Dialga from Phantom Forces.
Oh, that's Silver Dialga.
So Pat Flynn, he bought my PSA 10 copy, but I kept a PSA 9 for myself. So
nice. Yeah, it just looks like one solid mirror block of light on the camera.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I'm still perfecting the setup in here.
Oh, believe me, the certain cards will never show up well on a webcam.
Yeah.
And just like certain hosts, nice lead in, Dan. So here's the thing. When you look at the business, if you were doing a business plan, Alex, and you're talking about, okay, so I've got some selling going on. I've also got the podcast, Nostalgia Nomics. What percentage, how do you envision that sort of growing and developing over the next year or two in an ideal situation from a revenue standpoint? I mean, is it actual percentage wise one versus the other? Is it just using the podcast more to, while it's being monetized, or hope it finally gets monetized or whatever, so you can create more followers that you can then sell to? How does that all work in your mind?
Yeah, so I'm definitely more of a hybrid than I guess some people are. I definitely want to keep things pretty, pretty divvied out. Like, I don't want to kind of go all in on one thing. So yeah, like the buying and selling is definitely a portion. And then obviously the YouTube side's a portion. So yeah, you get some YouTube revenue. I try to use affiliate links, whereas that's way, people on the video can watch it. They can, click the links where they're not getting charged any extra, but they're able to support the channel without actually paying you anything or donating, which is nice. And then, sponsors have been popping up here and there, which, that helps. They'll pay a little bit. And then like the third avenue is really like doing like the live pack breaks and streaming, to where, especially with like older boxes like Sun and Moon, XY, or even Sword and Shield, some of them, people may not want to break a $700 box themselves, but they might pay $30 or $60 for a couple packs. And so, I've seen some success with that is when I can find deals here or there on like a Facebook or a Discord, or get an auction that ends low. I'm able to crack some of those on stream and make a little bit from doing that. It's not a ton, I'm not really into like the whole, full-time streaming culture where you're, some of those guys go off the rails, but it's really just kind of taking a little bit from each area and trying to bundle it all to make some sort of income out of it.
That's good. I mean, I think, anybody would say diversification. I ask you these questions because, there's invariably somebody listening who's thinking, gosh, I wish I could be just like that. In this case, he's right on the podcast with us. His name is Dan Norton. And so, as he tries to build out the business, we, it's just, and I guess Dan, he does some shows, and he doesn't really do much selling on eBay and stuff, but, and then he's trying to raise the revenue profile of his YouTube situation. So it's good to hear about the different ways that you can kind of tuck in another potential revenue avenues. So
whenever I'm selling cards, the only times I really do selling is when I do the in-person smaller local card shows. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be someone who's going to get booths at these bigger shows, and because obviously first and foremost, just being a collector, generally if I'm buying stuff for the collection, and then it's just extras and stuff is what's going to these card shows. I open a lot of product mainly because my wife does a lot of tournaments, so gets a lot of free boxes and stuff. So rather than trying to sell those and then buying a complete set, we get a bit more content out of it, and it's a bit more fun opening the boxes. That's how we end up with a decent amount of spare cards, and that stuff plus stuff we bring back from Worlds, things like that, are what go to the local shows. But the investing or the really going in on the buying collections, splitting up, flipping, that's never been my goal for what I'm doing with it. I would love to make a bit more of a living out of the content side of it. I know it's not easy to do that, but that's always been where I've been looking, rather than actually in the cards themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you guys both being collectors, when do you look to like buy the new cards and the new sets? Do you guys try to wait a certain amount of time? Are you looking for certain drops in price before you want to like actually move in and buy it for your collection? What kind of strategy do you guys take there?
Do you want to go first, David?
What the heck? I may as well. You never know how much I may not get an answer out by the time it's all over. So let's jump in. So the thing is that I historically am having my sets built for me. And those that watch the podcast have known over the last several weeks, I've kind of discussed the termination of that relationship. And so it's forced me to take a more in-depth look at the markets now with new releases of sets and what time I do actually want to go in. Should I go in day one? Should I go in later? I have a theory of this, and again, we'll talk more about this a little bit when we get into Nostalgia Nomics, but because, man, I don't know what you're doing on that channel. But here's the thing, there's like a glut. There is so many cards being produced right now. And so that's number one. Number two is there's so many sets that continue to come out. And so as we move further and further from those sets, there's sort of a loss of interest. There's new interest in the new sets. And sometimes the ones that came out, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, they go on to a hiatus for a little bit. And then there's the idea of who is a master set collector, who's a set collector. And my theory on that is virtually no one anymore is a set collector. Unfortunately, there's, again, too much stuff out there. And people would rather go focus on particular characters or, certain types of the stuff within a set. So, it's just like looking at whatever the last set I bought was. I don't know what it was. Dan will tell you, 151 or something. And when I was negotiating for the gentleman on the set, his price was reasonably fair at like $2,000. And I said, no, this thing's going to come crashing down. I'll go $1,200 right now. And we did the deal. And now I think if you look at eBay, it's probably $1,200 or even less. So
I think those prices, I think, were for your Paradox Rift set rather
yes,
than
exactly, Dan. Thank you for stepping up and correcting me as you do at least 1 to 17 times a podcast. Getting my butt kicked every Sunday morning by the inaccurate information I give by our good friend Dan Norton is really super fun. I should keep doing this podcast forever. While my stomach is hungry and I haven't had breakfast, we'll just sit on here and I'll be corrected by Dan Norton, DJ Gigabyte, if you're looking for him on YouTube. Oh my goodness. Paradox Rift, guys. Really sorry about that. So anyways, I just wait now. So now I'm not as panicked, and I do wait and wait longer and longer for the sets, because I see that after the first 3-6 months, whatever, they seem to fall. And then I guess we'll see over time, if we watch Nostalgia Nomics, whether or not they're going to go up again.
And so when I've been doing stuff, mainly it's because I've been opening stuff early because I was wanting to get videos and stuff out. Now, for the last few sets, we've really cut back on how much we're opening early, because we used to still be buying, we'd buy a case release weekend to get a video out, showing off some boxes and stuff, and then supplement it with what Laura was getting from tournaments. But now, Scarlet Violet era, we're finishing, even like the fact that me and my wife build a set each, we're finishing sets or getting close to finishing sets a lot easier than we obviously were during Sword and Shield or even during Sun and Moon. So it got to the point where we realized we were buying a case release weekend, and then after about a month, we then had loads of other boxes, and it's like, well, we don't want to open these boxes because the most expensive card we're missing from the set is $30. There's no point opening boxes now. So now we've dropped it back where release weekend, we're still going to try and maybe open a box, or try and get like a brick of the pre-release kits, but then we're just going to wait it out and see how much Laura gets by working and judging tournaments. And then for when we're just missing singles and stuff, we really just hang around until like the card shows and stuff, because if I'm running a booth at a card show, if there's certain cards that we want for our collection, obviously if everyone else in the room is a business where they're trying to buy cards so that they can resell them, they're going to be offering way less than I'll offer to buy a card for if I want it for my collection, and it'll mean I can still get the card cheaper than what I'd have to pay for it normally, but I'm still offering better than everyone in the room, because if I'm knocking, say, 20% off the normal price, everyone else in the room is knocking 40-50% off because they need to do the resale. So we try and do that, or we have a lot of stuff out for trade. I'm really happy to take trades off people at the card shows. And then with variants and stuff, me and David were talking about this last week, all the promo variants. We used to, or up until even recently, we've been trying to get everything as quick as possible, but we're just going to take a backseat on that. When now it's, unless something really seems like it's rare or it's some sort of weird release, like things that weren't supposed to be released, anything like that, we're just going to wait because of how much we've been screwed over in the last couple of years by Pokemon just saying one thing about the release and then just changing it, and things are nowhere near as rare as they said they were going to be, or someone just happens to get 2,000 copies of a card out the back door or something. So we're going to be taking a much more cautious approach over this year when it comes to stuff like that, stuff that should have an all right sized release. It's really only going to be the really rare stuff that we're now trying to jump on day one, and I guess it's mainly David buying those because I've been priced way out of the rarest stuff now.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is that since we have Alex on and the focus of what he's doing is in the investment side and in talking about it, the economic side, I should say for those that are watching, which I appreciate all three of you, the sets are not a good investment in my opinion at all. So we are collectors. Dan and I are collectors. And, had I looked back and was able to redistribute the budget that I've used over all the years, the spending, I would certainly hope I had more sealed material and less open sets and all the rest of it. But for me, this is a podcast about collecting. It really isn't. It's about everything. But I mean, the goal for us is to collect one of every English language card. And so that involves buying the sets and looking back over time. My focus was never to be investing in the hobby. It was to collect and put away one of every booster box, one of every theme deck, one of every English language card. And so that's continued to be the goal and the mission as opposed to putting something away for investment. And that's hard because, if I just spend $1,200 on a set, I know that that's not a very good investment. But I also know that it means I've also filled that hole of that set in my collection. So that's the difference, I think, in how hard it can be to do both successfully in this hobby. We've talked about this in previous podcasts. When you make it a business and you don't have the ability to turn over inventory and get that money moving again, you're in a whole different game. So, business wise, it's critically important that you really are able to segregate or almost not focus on the collection. Like Alex said, tuck something away maybe once in a while, but for the most part, you're trying to generate money and you need money to generate money. So you're kind of turning things over. Alex, I want to know about we're going to get to the podcast. I promise I won't just keep saying it and then we never get there. That's a lot of fun too. But let's talk about your wife for a moment, because everyone wants to know about your wife. Why would she choose you? How did she choose you? How did you meet her? And is there any chance of the relationship sustaining itself?
Nothing.
So we met, believe it or not, she was the front desk girl at my local gym. And so every day, I'd go in to work out and I'd, probably throw some kind of corny line. And eventually one of them worked and, he went out and the rest is history. But no, I mean, I tell everyone this, I think maybe because we don't have kids is why we have a strong and good relationship because, everything's pretty good. We never really fight about anything. We have similar goals and similar, I guess like beliefs in life and, everything's real great. I expect the relationship to sustain. She's 100% supportive with all this stuff. She's the one that, carries kind of the full-time job, the regular 9 to 5, has the healthcare and the benefits and stuff. And so it allows me to try these different businesses and crazy, entrepreneurial dreams that I have to maybe make something of myself. And so we work together really well.
That's fantastic. You've just described yourself just like Dan probably would with the sugar mama thing. So I'm sitting out here. I should basically leave the podcast at this point because I can't get my wife to do a darn thing. Thank goodness she doesn't listen to any of this. But all I get is constant criticism and what the hell were you doing? What were you thinking today? Which makes the weekly therapy appointments really entertaining. But your wife, I'm sorry, does not collect Pokemon cards at all?
No, she enjoys the art. She'll open packs with me, and if we get a card or in sometimes and she really likes it, I'll put it away and keep it. But nothing like too serious or anything. No, I mean she knows Pokemon, she likes it, but yeah, she's not anywhere near this level or nothing.
Okay, and is she still doing the health kit? Still working at the club, or is she doing something different now?
Oh no, she's in IT. She does like a Salesforce stuff for a company and works from home. So she's got a pretty good setup. She doesn't. I think she enjoys her job, enjoys her life to where, if she was doing something, that she hated or something or wasn't happy, I wouldn't feel as good about, kind of taking the risks or chances I do, trying new things. And I'd probably just go get a more stable job so she could get something she liked. But, she's really happy and enjoys what she does. And so it makes me feel a little less guilty about, trying these crazy plans I have.
Okay, good. Good. So let's move to the podcast Nostalgia Nomics. So, what tell our audience what's the mission? What's the goal? When you turn on the lights and the camera and you pretty yourself up like you obviously did today, what is the goal for the podcast? What are you trying to convey week to week or however often you do them?
It really started out as like anyone can do this type, mindset. And it's not a get rich quick thing. I think kind of gets misconstrued. It's an anyone can do this, right? To where if you're just in the hobby, to collect, but maybe don't have the money to put aside and collect that much. It's a way to, show people, here's what some things you can do to free up some money and kind of build your collection for free or make a little money to pay for your collection. Or it's, for those who, really enjoy the hobby, but maybe don't have the amount of time to buy and sell and do all of that. But they like this stuff and they want it to hold value over time. And so it's more about that, like showing, showing what has worked, what could work, talking about the charts and graphs and all the, numbers and dollars and cents and just kind of giving some, I guess, context and information on, how other people can kind of do what I did. I mean, I started in 2015, 16. And so obviously I went through the, boom with all of you guys and we saw our values go skyrocket. But, a lot of people think like that was the only reason things ever moved up. But it's like, when I got back in the hobby, I talk about it. A base set booster box was still $800. Like that was whatever it cost back in 99, what, 60, 70, $80. I mean, it still went up when Pokemon was apparently, not doing well. And then by the time the big Logan Paul and pandemic and all that came, that box was already, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 before it went to 30 or whatever. And then nowadays we still see all these boxes. I mean, just this last year, we saw a bunch of XY and Sun and Moon boxes all see massive rises and all these different cards. And it's like, every single year there's different sets and different cards and boxes that move up in value. And I just think it's a way to be able to, the channel is more a way to show you that, hey, you can, love what you love this hobby and enjoy it and actually be able to put money into it and not be afraid to lose it because, if you're kind of positioning yourself right, a lot of this stuff can not only hold, but actually gain value over time. So you can stop feeling as guilty about yourself.
Yeah. And how much do you practice what you preach? So, I know a piece of that is just your own amount of capital that you have available or invested. But, as you're giving these ideas and these, kind of chart analysis, evaluations to your audience, how much of that are you actually doing on your own?
I would say 100% of it. And when I say 100%, I don't mean that, I'm buying every single card or every single box, or every single item I show, but like every single, thing I talk about, I believe in, I probably buy most of the cards or items I talk about. It really comes down to what, obviously you can afford at the time and, how much you can actually get to. And then I've been really honest about, with my audience about this transition into doing this full time. A lot of money is, going away from the investing side lately. I still am trying to put some away, every set, but a lot more of it is now going to, put capital into the business for buying singles and collections and grading cards and constantly, having things move through more than it was before. And, that's why I tell people is you just got to find what's right for you because there is no right, there's no right thing to do. It's whatever's right for each person. Like some people may have, a $250,000 a year job and, they like to collect it, but they don't want to feel like they're throwing money away. So it's like, well, hey, here's the things that usually do well. You can actually, if you like these things, want to collect them, you can actually feel okay because these have always had a good track record. You can feel good about parking money here. And then, there's people that are, brand new and they don't have a lot of money. So I can say, hey, here's what I'm doing literally right now, how I'm able to, flip these or do this to make some money. If you got a little bit of cash, you can try to do these same things, make a little extra, fund your collection, continuing to snowball it into a bigger, into a bigger pot as a whole, and you can build your business over time. So I would say I try to put into practice every single thing I talk about. Do I own every single card and every single box I ever talk about? No, absolutely not. But I believe in what I'm saying.
Yeah. And what about, do you have a philosophy other than from a particular product standpoint? So other than you saying, well, this one product really stands out, do you have a belief system yet established around whether or not you believe sealed is a better investment than individual cards, sealed versus raw, depending on how cheap it is, raw versus PSAs, 10 9s or 8s or CGCs or grading companies, and whatever you're doing. How do you balance all of that in your views as far as potential future investment in gains?
So if we're talking just purely numbers, right? Just purely numbers, taking everything else out of it. Yeah, I'm always going to be more pro sealed, and not all sealed. I'm not saying go out and buy a box that's already 50 grand. But it's really the modern sealed. When these boxes come out, and you can find them in the 80s and 90s a lot of the times online. Ever since I've been in the hobby, I mean, you can argue. When Roaring Skies and Primal Clash got a huge reprint, they dropped in the 70s. And then, obviously the whole Chilling Reign, Fusion Strike, Battle Style stuff, they dropped really low. And there's been other reprints, but modern boxes in the past 9 years or so, they've never really dropped under that, $70 mark. And so, there's a pretty built-in floor. Obviously, things can always go lower, anything can happen, but we haven't seen it happen. So there's a pretty little downside risk when you're getting into that. But the upside potential is, if you look back at every single box that's ever been produced, they've all risen over time. It just depends on your time frame, and so that's why I like sealed. Is where if you're buying into singles or slabs, you're getting in at some point where it's already it's already valued as something. So if you're buying a slab, it's already been valued something. It's already went up, or it's already has the grade and authentication value built into it. And so there's always room for it to drop, I guess, unless you're buying a $10 or $15 card in a slab. And so I just feel like there's less risk, and I feel like it's more proven. And they're not making more of it, right? After all the reprints and everything are done, and the set's 2, 3, 4 years old, you're not making more of it. So every day there's less. And even if I talk about this, it's more getting into the investing side. It's kind of like the correlation between, the product's always going down. So the demand could literally stay the same, or it could go down a little bit, and the product could still rise in value because there's less and less. Whereas with a slab, there's always more and more every single day. More and more are graded, more and more are opened. And so if the demand just stayed the same, the value would actually start to fall over time. So you really need the demand to really increase to keep the value where it is. And then you really need the demand to exponentially increase to continue to rise the value of the slabs. And so I just feel like it's a lot harder process for slabs to rise in value.
Yeah, so I sort of agree with everything you said. I guess I do agree. So then I want to take that one step further. When you're showing, so I've watched some of your podcasts. They're not easy to get through. I'll tell you the truth. I have to be pretty drunk to get through an entire one, and I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to imbibe myself substantially with the liquor to make sure I can talk intelligently about what you're doing out there. But here's the thing, let's say you do a podcast you did one recently on Charizards and the era of Charizards, and is it now, are we getting back into where they're going up again and the glut is not there or whatever? Why? So my two questions are this. You were presenting information, but I would have loved if you'd have actually said, out of all of these Charizards, here's the two I would be focused on, right? So more of your assessment, if you're sort of going to become the expert in this, these are the ones I might be focusing on more than others. And then maybe something else to compare and contrast. Well, but if you're going to spend $50 on a bunch of Charizard cards, maybe you should still consider spending $80 or $90 on a Paradox Rift. I have no idea what the Paradox Rift boxes are. But, because again, we're not collectors. we're not collectors at this point necessarily. We could be. If you're a collector and the person that's watching you is saying, okay, I'm a collector, but I really just want to hedge my bets and I want to have something that I think is going to go up down the road just in case I want to sell it, then you look at it from that standpoint, the Charizards. But if you're saying, gosh, but my number one pick this week, despite all this information, is I would still go buy some Paradox Rift sealed boxes.
Well, okay, so it kind of gets into some nuance there. I think the booster boxes are definitely kind of, I guess, your safest play if you're getting in at the right place, right prices. And they've proven that over time, as the supply runs dry, the scarcity picks up. They do start to rise in value. They always have. That could always change. I get into that argument all the time. But with the cards, right, we see the most exponential gains usually in the cards. So it's a lot more risky. That happens a lot less often. And so, like, out of an entire set, if when the set spikes, you can go see this during like the the boom. Only the few, like some of the top hits in the set actually see the bigger rises than the actual box did. And so you can't, for people who do want to kind of be more like a stock picker instead of like a mutual fund investor type thing, they want to go after those bigger gains. Then it might make sense to go after the single cards or go after the slabs and go for that scarcity and rarity factor. So I just think it's it's showing both ways to play the market. If you want to be more of the safer long term person, you want to try and play the swings in the markets while the Charizards or the slabs are down. And so when it getting to like my pick, I could definitely add more of that in. I try to tread that line of like trying like influencing people of what to do and just letting them make their own decisions type thing.
Do you okay, so have you had any criticism from and these are I'm throwing the hard balls, okay? There's no more softball stuff. Here we're just rolling right in. Have you had any criticism from commenters or followers that have said, I know you're still relatively new to this, so maybe there hasn't been enough time, but I followed your advice and it didn't work, or your advice sucks and you shouldn't be giving it, or you should be giving disclaimers about your advice that you're not giving advice. In this world where everybody is into blaming others, how has that gone, and how do you envision any of that kind of materializing over time?
Yeah, it could definitely happen as the markets swing. You'll probably think I'm lying, but like, I'm sure there's some commenters in there over the time. I've been on YouTube over 2 years now, or almost 2 years. So I'm sure people have said things like that. But to be honest with you, the majority of what I get Instagram or Discord DMs, or I'll get emails, and people will send me like, they'll have like the collector app that tracks their collection, or they'll send me like things they bought, and they send me all the successes they've had since I've been on YouTube. So that it's kind of the opposite. They've been showing me like how they've been putting my practice to work, and they've been continuously gaining value with what they've been buying. The criticism I get more is how I go about it. Maybe like being too brash, or maybe like coming at topics with too much energy, or coming at people who have had different ideas or different opinions than me, and maybe like coming at them too hard, or getting into too hardcore of debates with them and things like that. Like, that's been the most criticism I got, is like kind of more like at me or how I do things, and less about like the things I'm saying and the advice so far. But yeah, like you said, in the future, crazy market tanks and everything, we'll see when where the torches and pickaxes start flying then.
Well, and Dan, this is a good lesson for you, because if you keep coming at me like you have been, eventually you're going to get those comments as well. So I'm just telling you, ease off on the gas pedal, buddy. And remember, that's why they have a brake pedal too. So Alex, it's not for me to say anything, because I don't know anything. I'm just a guy. We all, if we're not going commando, we all wear our underwear, and we all pull up our pants, and we all do that same stuff every day. And so, I think it would be interesting for you, and maybe, throw a couple of comments out. One would be if it were me these days, I would disclaimer things a bit more, just, and just say I do it because we live in a world where there's lawsuits and there's stuff. And I'm not calling myself a financial professional, because, Alex, I'm an investment advisor. I advise my clients, on what to buy investment wise in the markets, and also on their financial planning. That goes obviously hand in hand. because you should understand your profile and the risk and what you need to do all that successfully. So, so I would certainly always disclaim, and then I would, I think you can, my topic on this would be deepen your discussion um, around the profiles of the people that you're talking about. So, like when you just said, hey, if you're the gambling mentality and you are not, so the conservative play might be the booster boxes, but the more aggressive play is this. One might materialize over this much time, one might have to see the results longer term. I think that would begin to allow your viewers and audience a chance to figure out which box they fit in, and then which advice they should really be maybe more attuned to when you're giving it. And you might also help them with the next step in their journeys, which is sometimes it's not easy to know what box you fit in. And sometimes there's, do I fit here? Do I fit here? And why? How does my life circumstances? Do you have other income you're already making? Is this all your income? Also your personality, also your sleep at night factor. Are you going to worry about the money when you put it there? All those kind of financial planning things would really dovetail really well into your podcast, I think, in trying to connect and really advise folks on how they best should be looking at it. And then with everything as a cautious risk perspective to them, meaning you don't just get to put yourself in a basket because you might be completely evaluating your situation wrong, continuing to think about yourself and making sure you're in the right spot too.
I'll definitely take all that advice. That's you went full investment advisor on me. I liked it. That's I'm sure that's the same kind of conversations you go through with your clients. So no, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that so I was on. I go to Facebook at night because invariably, when you're married over 30 years, there's a tremendous amount of arguing and sleepless nights. So I'll lay in bed with Facebook thinking about what I did wrong during the day and if the marriage is going to last. And I will go through and look at different, listings. And we have a friend. His name is Drew Goritsky. I guess I don't know if I'm saying his name right at the end. Dan, you know Drew, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it, Goritsky.
Yeah. So I was reading a post last night, and he said, and he's very interesting. He's not very public as far as I think a lot of people know him, but he's not very public as far as his analysis stuff. And he just a few followers, but he was talking about, hey, I think the set you should go buy right now is Brilliant Stars. So it was really interesting. And, he said, this is it. Here's how long it's been out of reprint. Here's how long it's been in this. You still can get it for the 160 range. He was actually saying, go buy it on the Pokemon Center because it's like the cheapest place you can buy it literally in the country right now. So I like the fact that when he says that, it makes me think, gosh, he's pretty confident. Maybe I should go buy some Brilliant Stars. So that's, I think that would be a next evolution for you as you feel confident in developing specific recommendations for your viewers.
Yeah. I think the reason I've started, or I've kind of, I guess, always shied away from, giving that a little bit is kind of like what you said, is just, people being upset if you were wrong and they took your advice and it didn't pan out for them, because you and I both know there's a lot of risk when it comes to putting your money in anything, but then other people might hear it and think it's like a sure thing and not understand what happens when you lose money. So I agree. I mean, I would like to, make more, come at you 100% having an opinion content. It's just, it worries me sometimes to be, too gung-ho on something and then it not pan out and, get people hurt or something. But I guess there's a way, like you said, to give the proper, whatever compliance stuff beforehand.
Yeah, I know that when Drew does it, Drew just does it on his personal Facebook, so it's just people who are friends with him, and the way Drew puts it across, it obviously really isn't advice. It's just, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah,
you can copy me if you want to. So like Drew has a fairly successful online store. He doesn't do the shows and stuff. He goes by the name the Dark Twins. You might have heard of him. You might have seen him on eBay or TCG Player and stuff.
Okay.
But he's been doing it a long time. But yeah, all his stuff is just kept to personal friends rather than being like, a YouTube channel or a Patreon or something public showing as investment advice or anything like that. It's it's a much more private deal.
Okay. Yeah.
And when you're looking at so those charts that you're showing, Alex, are they TCG? I guess they're TCG player recent sales and things like that, correct?
Yeah, either that or sometimes I'll use pokedata.io for like longer term stuff, and then sometimes TCG Fish has some good charts, and so I try to look around and see where the accuracies are. But for like the shorter term, like 1 year and under stuff, I usually just use TCG Player.
Okay. Okay. And when you use that, so again, there's people that aren't going to be so familiar. I just learned about TCG Fish and all of this stuff this very recently. The what are those sales based on? Where are they getting data? Are they getting it from every sale on every platform? Are they just getting, is it eBay? Is it just their own platforms? Where are these data points coming from?
So you and I both know one of the owners of TCG Fish. I've talked to him, and he's told me they're from all the different auction sites. So I guess they pull them from eBay and Golden and Heritage and kind of anywhere that's selling slabs online that they have set up with their algorithm. But I think it's most of the big ones as far as like TCG Fish. And I think, I can't confirm, but I think Pokedata.io does the same. Then TCG Player is strictly TCG Player sales. So, TCG Player's data is going to be like, I would think 100% accurate because it just comes straight out of their system. Whatever goes into whichever sale happens on there immediately goes in the chart. And so TCG Player is just TCG Player data, and the other sites, I believe, I know one of them pulls from multiple auction websites, and I believe the other one does too.
Okay. And again, I really not doing a tremendous amount of selling outside of eBay. I don't know much about TCG Player. I know when you're reading Facebook posts, everybody's talking about, hey, I want 70% of TCG Players prices or something, and they use that. But what percentage, either one of you, Dan, well, Dan doesn't do pricing on anything. So Dan just collects and spends money, and then Laura takes care of all the bills. So TCG Player, what percentage of people are using it to sell their stuff versus auctions, versus eBay, versus other outlets, that to just, for people that are wondering, what am I missing if I'm just looking at charts and from that site?
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing, right? TCG Player, they just have them listed as, singles as near mint, light play, played, whatever. Whereas all of us know, and I'm sure most people watching your podcast, they're this deep in the hobby, know, you can go on eBay and there's 10 different levels of near mint, right? I mean, you can find a card that's basically like a PSA 10 quality, or other ones that are 9 or 8 quality, other ones barely a 7, right? And then there's a whole slew of light plays. And so on eBay, when there's pictures involved and everyone can zoom in and look at all the pictures real closely, I mean, you could have a card sell for $40, another one sell for $31, another one sell for $36. Whereas, TCG Player, it's all going to be around the same price, because people just usually, it lists it from the lowest first, and people usually just go down the list most of the time. And so I guess it's more of an average, I would think. I think TCG Player is closer to an average price. And then when it comes to sealed product, you just got to shop around. Sometimes TCG Player is going to be cheaper. Sometimes eBay is going to be cheaper. Sometimes your independent LGS website, like a Safari Zone or something like that's going to be cheaper. And so you just really got to, shop around. I guess the charts more just give like a baseline to how the market's moving, and less about, exact prices, I would think.
I would say for
Okay.
TCG Player, the way the website is set up, it's a lot more beneficial for players rather than collectors. It's set up when you're talking about those different levels of near mint, when you're buying cards to put into your deck for the next tournament, those tiny, basically what would be 10 different variations in the same grade, like, you don't care. If you're buying near mint, fine, you get one that's near mint. You don't care if it's near mint because of a tiny dot on the back or something small on the front. You're just buying it for your deck, and it's a lot better for players than collectors. One thing I do use TCG Player for is I will usually try and use it to get a guide on where cards are in a set, like in relation to each other. Like, because you can list it on TCG Player, you can say go to a set and go to Paradox Rift. sorted high to low. And even if I don't trust the prices 100%, I can at least trust where it's going. Okay, this is cards 1, 2, 3 in most expensive from the set. So I don't always know. Like, it'll say one card is, say, 90 and 70, then 50. I don't know that's going to be exact prices, but I at least know that's the most expensive card from the set. That's the one I'm looking for when I'm trying to open it, so I can talk about it in videos and say, that's the big pull. That's what we're hoping to get. That's the main thing I use TCG Player for, rather than actually buying cards.
Yeah, and like I said, like with the charts too, even though they're not like maybe 100% accurate, you could find different prices elsewhere. Especially if there's major moves, it definitely helps. Like, if you're looking at cards on TCG Player and you see cards fluctuating within a few dollars or $5 or $10, yeah, there's probably just a rounding error. If you look at eBay, you probably find them cheaper. But when you can look on there and see cards that move from $30 to $45, $55, now they're selling for $60. Well, there's movement there. You look at the rest of the cards in the set, there's following a trend. You look at the box, like you can definitely get a gauge on the market with it. But yeah, I agree. It's definitely more a player site, I would say.
Yeah. It's good for doing trades in person whenever if I'm at one of the trade days locally or if I'm at the events, as long as we're both using the same site, it's fine. I can say I've got $90 of TCG Player value. You've got $90. Who cares if that's the real value? If they both match up on the site, great.
Yeah, and you think eBay would find a way to do better with that, because you guys know how it is. I mean, you go buy a car on eBay, you could have someone set, listed as near mint or near mint in the title. You look at it, it's creased. It's like, it would be cool if eBay would find a way to where you can actually sort it. Like, these are all the near mint, these are all the light play, to where you don't have to go through every little picture and look at them before you buy. But so, I mean, I get the goods and bads, but no, I agree with you. If you're a serious collector and you want it to be pristine, you're looking at eBay. You're not looking at TCG Player.
All right, I'm going to interject real quick because I got to do our giveaway. So numbers. So this week, this is the card. Dan, look it up while I'm doing it. Give me a number. I don't have my glasses, and I cannot see. I cannot see the number. So this card, this character this week is Lugia from Lugia Rocks America, and so Dan, what's the number on the bottom? So while Dan's looking, you guys got to come to my direct DMs, or like direct messages or deadly markers, or just put something in that fits for the letters. And then talk to me on Instagram and give me this number and give me the name of the thing, Lugia. And then you get entered in a drawing, repost something, and you get another extra drawing thing. And it's fun, and you don't care, and you win or you lose. It doesn't matter. And then I'm going to make this card the giveaway of the podcast, not the giveaway, the podcast deal of the day today. For anybody that was watching this far, if you weren't watching, just to even look at Alex's wonderful, cute face, then you were an idiot anyway. So, and I don't mean idiot, I mean in a very positive situation, a really kind person, idiot. So, Dan, what is the number first?
It's set number 29 in the set.
The card is 29, okay? Lugia, 29. Get it to me before you get it, everything. And so then this card, if you can find this card on, since we're talking eBay, TCG Player, PWCC, I don't even know what I'm saying. They're like acronyms or something. And, it's Sunday morning. Nobody cares. Go to church. So here's the thing. So here's this card. All right. And it's I love this card. It's from like 2005 and it's on eBay. The cheapest one on eBay, I think I looked last night, was about 25 or $30 for light play. If you get up into near mint to mint, it's much, much more expensive than that. So anyways, it's I'm going to do it this week for 20. I'll do it for $20. I don't even want to give the extra $5. We'll do it for $20. You got to pay shipping, so it's got to be 20 plus $5. So $25. If you want an extra one, I won't charge you extra shipping. For a near mint to mint copy of Lugia Rocks America, one of the greatest promos that I love from 2005, a long time ago. So jump into my DMs, let me know. As you guys know, as always, you must pay by Zelle or by PayPal, friends and family. And that's it. That's this week's stuff. All right, back to Alex. Way more important than any of that stuff. Alex.
Well, now that you mentioned that, I should load up on that stock.
Huh? Yes.
Now that you might have that card, I load up on those. It'll probably be $35, $40 lowest price after this podcast.
Well, here's the funny part. Then you what you do is you grade them, right? You get the 10s, and all of a sudden it's 100 or 120 or 150 because I don't grade or worry about all that stuff. So. So how do you decide, Alex, what's going to be on your next podcast? So is it just kind of random and what comes to your mind, or?
Yeah, honestly, it gets a little brutal trying to continue to keep the content fresh and not be repetitive. I definitely always, every morning or whatever, I'll look for market swings, or I'll look at news on different sites, or any type of content that I watch in the Pokemon space that I see come up that I think was relative, or I have a different take on it, or anything that where I just feel like the information is valuable and can help people make decisions in the paths they're taking. I just try to throw it on there. I mean, there's really I really don't have any set thing or set place I go to, or like set bag of ideas I pull from. It's just new every single week.
Okay. And do you do anything with the new stuff? So you sort of have to do the newer stuff. You really have to be in the know a little bit. And I'll look at I don't look at anything, but in a theory, if I had time and I looked at something, it'd be Pokey Beach or whatever. You start to see these articles coming out about what this set's going to contain. And then Dan will yell at me because he does that both publicly and privately. It's a great foundation for a relationship. And he's like, David, that's not even the site you should be using. They get all their information from another site, which lists all the stuff that's upcoming. But it's interesting to think about if you could look ahead and say, you know what, these are the sets that are coming out, or this is the next one. It looks like it's going to be good. It looks like it's going to be bad. You might want to stay away. You might want to jump in because of the things that are in it. Do you ever go to that extent, or are you pretty much working more towards past sets and past data?
I definitely do that. Yeah, I'll definitely look forward to sets and give my opinions on them. I mean, for the ever since Sword and Shield kind of came to an end, and Pokemon caught up with the printing and everything, it's not as big of a deal with sealed anymore, because now it's kind of the trend is sealed's going to come out and it's going to be cheap, and even if it isn't cheap, they're going to reprint it and it's going to get cheap, and so there's really no rush to rush into sealed. So it's what is or isn't in the set doesn't, because even 151, I mean, that's the most popular set we've seen in Scarlet and Violet. And even those prices are now, kind of trending down, and you can pick up the ETBs and the UPCs and all that pretty cheap. And so it's less about kind of predict anything that happens with the sealed market out of the gate. But yeah, definitely with the cards, I mean, a couple that come to mind, just looking back at the Paldea Evolve Magikarp, that really shot up after, pre-release and after release, which is kind of not the norm for most cards after a release. And then Paradox Rift, the Groudon, Paradox Rift, it's all a good spike, after release. It's come back down from then. But just trying to look ahead to those types of things and give people, some sort of a little leg up, looking at, art and looking at, the popularity of the Pokemon and what could happen. Obviously there's no guarantees. There's no, I don't have any insider information. I just try to give my take on things, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong type stuff.
Let me throw out a box name for you. There's these. We did a podcast a couple weeks ago on, and I think we featured a set called Plasma Storm. And all I know about plasma is there's Plasma Storm, Plasma Blast, and Plasma something else. Dan?
Freeze.
Okay. Yeah. So one of them is the cheaper one of the three. For whatever reason, doesn't matter. So I'm going to call it Storm I'm going to make that up right now. And I'm going to say I have several cases of Plasma Storm tucked away somewhere. Okay. So does anybody care, Alex? Is anybody ever going to revisit Plasma Storm? We are so many years past Plasma Storm. We are so many years. Now we're 4 new sets a year. The younger generation gives a heck less of what, this old guy's doing out there and what he has packed away. And, what's who's going back to make those? Is it just the gamblers? Is no one's going to make that set? They might look for the high value card. And so then you're on a late night live stream buying a pack, on Whatnot or whatever. What's going on with this older stuff? Is it just, do we just forget about it and it fades into the annals of Pokemon history?
It's honestly, everyone's gonna have a different opinion. My opinion is, and unfortunately, it's kind of like a slight to anyone. I probably like you who got in during, kind of the middle eras. Is the truth is, the biggest popularity in Pokemon was, during the 1990s to, early 2000s, kind of like the WotC time. And then the next big spurge of popularity was in the 2016 and forward time with the XY, Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and so on. And so, a lot of a lot of the sales of the cards and the products are going to be, really focused on those two, sides of the hobby. And even, when things go like XY, those are even slowing down. So yeah, I mean, maybe it doesn't have as much people or as many people going back, but that's kind of where the rarity factor factors in is, well, there's less of all that because there wasn't as many people in the hobby. So you don't really need too many people to go back to really, keep those cards, relevant and keep those cards, at the same values or maybe rising in values. As far as like the plasma stuff, right at the end of Black and White, the issue with that is those boxes are pretty expensive. So, once boxes get to that $500 or $1,000 mark, you're already pricing out a lot of like the average, hobbyist and collectors. So, you're going to be people that have more money, that are more serious, maybe pack breakers, or maybe people who are just, getting the hobby and they want to collect one of every box. So your customer base is smaller, but yeah, I'm sure if we look on eBay, they sell, they're not as often as new boxes, but, over time they sell. It's definitely, if you're going to hold your product long-term, which I tell people, long-term being like 5, 10 years plus, it's definitely going to be less liquid to get out of than it is getting out of a box that goes to like $300-$400. So, I don't think it's like a bad thing to have whole boxes and have them that high. It's just be realistic about how long it's going to take you to liquidate your position type thing. But no, I think they'll sell. I think people still want them. Enough people. Hobby's big though. The world's a big place, and Pokemon being worldwide, as all of our generation continues to age, and people continue to have more and more money. One thing we've seen in life is people always use their disposable income to buy the things they like, and as their money increases, the things they like usually increase in value, and so I think there'll be a market there.
I mean, it's as you talk, I'm actually listening to you. Dan faded out about 30, from what I can see on my fade out chart, about 37 minutes ago. So as what's so interesting is, you, from an investment standpoint, you'd argue go buy some Paradox Rift because, or anything new is what I'm getting at, because it takes $90 for it to double, right? That's it, 90 to 180. Whereas if you're looking at a Plasma Storm that's $4,000 or $3,000 or $5,000, it's, again, who's going to buy that? It has to be that box collector or that box breaker just looking to make a splash in some other area. So it really is, as you start to really understand the nuances of Pokemon investing, even how limited that stuff is because the demand is not there, and the demand coming, a lot of it because of the not having as much liquidity in the hobby yet, Pokemon still being a relatively young hobby, it really starts to allow you to differentiate and make more educated and strategic decisions about what you are going to spend your money on, if you're not a collector and if you're actually an investor.
Yeah, and it kind of goes both ways. Like going back to that whole like gambler, or just a more of a risk taker. It's like, if the hobby does continue to age like that, and more and more people with money want to continue to go back and collect, because it's so rare and because it's scarce. I mean, I don't know how many boxes of each of those are listed on the market. It can't be many. It doesn't take much interest to really see those exponential rises, because you could see someone buy a box for $3,000, and then the cheapest one's $3,500, and then if someone buys that, well, now the cheapest one's $4,000. It's like overnight you just saw a 20-30% price move, where you're not going to see that with like a modern box, right? I mean, because there's just, once sellers, some of the large sellers see things start to rise, then they'll start throwing large amounts of supply on the market, want to liquidate their positions, and it takes a lot longer time for a lot of the product and the real new stuff to work its way out of the system, where some of the older stuff, you can see things rise really rapidly because it only takes a small amount of interest to return to those to really rise the price.
Yeah. I wonder, it's funny how you can evolve. This is you don't have to pay me for any of this advice, because really most people don't take it anyway. So really just listen intently and then disregard everything I say when I'm done. So I think you should run a vintage podcast. In other words, once every week, and not once every month or whatever, where you are just talking about maybe vintage stuff and saying, like, for example, Secret Wonders is a box that's one of the ones that I believe is least amount of product that's out there on the market of anything. And it doesn't have a great degree of demand, which is why the box just doesn't escalate in price. But if you take and extrapolate out the argument that more money is going to come into the hobby over a period of time, and as this thing matures more, and now you're going to have these collectors that are going to want to still put one box of every product in their collection, and they now can afford to do that. Now they come looking for Secret Wonders, which was invariably never got more than $5,000 or 6 or 7, when if you looked at scarcity of that box, it should be 50,000. Okay. But it's not, because nobody wants to buy that box of cards.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that I think if you're at least pointing it out, there's got to be some whales, so to speak, that are looking and that have the money for a Plasma Storm or a Secret Wonders or whatever the box would be. And you can kind of tailor parts of your podcast to those folks on a periodic basis too, where you do that analysis and look up the stuff that, I think would be interesting when you really look at the longer term view.
No, I agree with you. I definitely need to. I created my channel. It was really, based around modern. I think the reason was I don't know if you guys remember, kind of back when I was creating my channel a few years ago, it was a lot of the investing, hardcore collector space was really focused on vintage, and modern was seen as more of an entryway into the hobby, and it was fun. It was for the kids and open packs and things. But if you're really putting any real money into this, or you're really wanting to invest, you need to go where the rarity and scarcity factors are. You need to move back, into the middle era and the vintage stuff, and get into stuff you did, you get into the trophies and the exclusives, and really dig into the releases. And my whole thing when I started was, well, hey guys, I think popularity and demand have just as much as a factor as a lot of the rarity and scarcity do. And that's why I really centered around modern, is because I was like, I understand all the, fundamentals that go along with all of that. But at the same time, we've never seen this amount of people pour into the hobby. And I get the modern stuff there's a lot more, and the populations are so much higher. The cars and the print runs are so much higher, but the people in the hobby now are just so much greater. And so I just saw I saw a larger, opportunity in modern at the time. It's why I focused on it so much more. But now that things have really calmed down, I do agree with you. I think there is starting to be, and now that a lot of the vintage prices and mid-era prices have dropped from those pandemic highs, I think there are a lot of opportunities returning to the market. I agree.
Yeah, and also, just I always wonder, I don't really know the answer to this. I believe, just because I've been in this hobby so long, I believe booster boxes are ultimately the best investment you can make. But then you have this entire group of folks who love their ETBs, right? And they love, their collection boxes. And I think a lot of them believe that those are fantastic investments. They love to show them off, and I've compiled all this stuff. And again, as you raise your profile and take us on as sponsors someday, because Dan and I are desperate, Alex, don't leave us behind. Come on, be a good
How
friend.
How are we going to afford to sponsor anything? We make no money.
Dan, Dan, it's funny when we get to the money is when you come jumping right in, okay? I thought the headphones were going to get thrown to a wall and you were going to go running for the exits. So, Alex, you should, I think you should talk about categories of investments too, because there's so many new people. Hey guys, instead of buying the ETB at 40, save your money for 80. And, if you want the ETB special card, go buy it, and then lock down this stuff that's probably going to be worth more in the future. Because a lot of those folks are just very young and don't understand that they're not spending their money as wisely as they could from a product category standpoint, if they have a choice in what to spend strictly from an investment standpoint. I can't speak to the display factor or whatever, and again, I could be totally wrong. You might do an analysis and it might say that ETBs go up more than the booster boxes. Maybe the new collector is in the hobby are buying so much of them because they're a little less expensive, and so the demand is there on a stronger basis. I don't know, but those kinds of evaluations I think would be valuable as well.
Yeah, I think what happened with ETBs, there's just a big shift of how Pokemon like printed them. When Sword and Shield happened, where people, that's kind of the argument, is people will look back at the end of Black and White and then XY, Sun and Moon, and they'll see these really high expensive ETBs, and even with like Rebel Clash, and they'll see all those and they'll think like that's indicative of the future. Whereas what happened was Pokemon changed up what they did, and they used to almost never reprint ETBs. It was always booster boxes, whereas now they reprint a lot of ETBs in a lot of these sets, which it makes it a lot more supply than we've seen before. And now it's kind of like the secret's out about them, so everyone's thinking that it's going to be the XY Sun and Moon ETBs again, and it just I agree with you. It's just kind of given this warped view of it. But again, like you said, we could both be wrong, and it could end up being the top collectible. But I agree. I think these are all great ideas. You should come on and we should go through these together.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm always here. So, I mean, again, I always offer my assistance to anybody, that's interested. I don't, again, collaboratively, we do so much more better as people, as a society, as a community, and you kind of, hopefully the haters aren't there and getting in the way. But I just think that, if you're going to be a good hobby ambassador in some way, then you look to continue to heighten that education curve, because it just means that people will love being in the hobby and they won't regret mistakes later on that we've all made ourselves. Dan, a few more than the rest of us, and they can then feel better about what they're doing and the future of their own collecting. So
I agree.
Let's talk about counterfeiting, resealing, that kind of stuff. So anybody that deals with vintage boxes worries these days that you can't trust a darn thing that's going to be put in front of you if you're trying to buy it. And that goes, I don't even know how far that goes up. It certainly goes through the WotC era, and it goes through the EX era. Anything where boxes are 5, 10,000 or more, etc. So there's just a lot of big players who always bought boxes sealed, and I'm not a big player, but I'm just going to put myself as a box buyer, that we just don't buy boxes anymore. We're too afraid. We're too afraid of the exposure for what's going to be inside the box, no matter what it looks like. So invariably, there is someone out there right now that is ahead of us. They're dealing with, Dan knows all the eras, you do too. I only know the era of how quickly my life's going to be over. So Diamond and Pearl, pick an era, pick something. And somebody's out there with the machine right now resealing those boxes because they know that they're not where they are value-wise, like people would never suspect it, and they want to get ahead of it somewhere. Now, I'm making that up, but it's theoretically possible. How much do we have to worry about, in your opinion, the concept of booster boxes ultimately, like, unless you're buying modern and 6-box case sealed, blah, 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 you almost should really be almost more careful now about buying anything going back, because you just never know what's really inside the box.
No, I agree. It is becoming a problem. I mean, we've seen talking about, Rusty. I mean, we've seen him get fooled. We've seen PokeRev open, fake boxes. It's like some of the top people in the hobby get fooled. And it's like, as much as you want to, think that you know what to look for, and that you've, been around the product enough and seen enough, which I'm sure, you've seen just about as much as anyone. You always have that doubt in your mind, and the person buying it from you, as trusted as you are, it's like they still have that doubt in their mind. And yeah, I really don't know. Here's the one thing I think about is I try to think about like other hobbies and like, sports cards and stuff. And, they have to have the same issues, and, you still see a lot of those high dollar boxes transact. So, I like to believe, like, in my heart, that it's few and far between. Like, you have I talk about it sometimes, like, you have all the Pokemon drama channels now, and they're constantly trying to find a new video every day of someone else stealing or resealing or doing this, doing that bad thing. But I think in reality, it's such a small portion of this hobby. And, I talk about it, like, I've been on eBay for 12 years now, and I haven't had any major, scams or thefts or, anything like that. Whereas you still have people coming today, they're afraid to sell on eBay, or they're afraid of this. I just think it's blown out of proportion a little bit. But yeah, it does happen, and it's definitely something to worry about in the future. I agree.
Yeah, Dan, do you own anything that's resealed in the house that we need to know about? I mean, from a confessional standpoint, Dan, this is your opportunity. Weigh in, say something about resealed material that scares the heck out of you.
I barely own anything sealed.
I know, you're so smart.
Almost everything I have gets opened. The only few things that we're ever actually going to keep sealed is Laura's battle arena with the Era Eveltal sealed, and there's a couple of blisters we're keeping sealed because they look cool, but yeah, the majority of stuff we have gets opened. We're not sealed collectors at all.
Sounds like a good time, though.
Yeah, it's
what about this theory? So here's my theory. All sealed stuff is going to be eventually counterfeited. No reason to buy it anymore. Okay. You all PSA graded. We're going to go PSA. Who cares? CGC. You can't trust them, from what the haters tell me. That's not true. I'm just teasing. So all will go just PSA graded cards. All you should buy is PSA graded 10s, because all the other cards are going to come out in more and more quantities. 10s, even though they'll come out in more quantities, they're still 10s, and there's fewer and far between condition wise than 9s, 8s, 7s, and 6s, one would hope, unless it's a particular card that always comes out in a 10. So Alex of Nostalgia Nomics, is what you told us here today that all that people should buy is just PSA 10 cards of their best characters, Charizard and stuff, and that's the only way that they're actually going to be guaranteed to make money down the road?
Well, what about graded packs? Can we count those since PSA grades those?
Oh my goodness. Don't get me started. Don't even get me started. Folks that are watching, don't ever buy a slabbed pack. You don't know what's in it. They're grading the way it looks, and it has nothing. It's been weighed, and all the good stuff's been gone, and so don't ever do that. Okay.
That's actually another question, though. Like, going to that, all the counterfeits, I mean, those are technically authenticated. Like, how, are their authenticators really good enough to authenticate a pack?
Yeah, I think I wish that the grading, we talk about this, I wish the grading card companies that everybody rely on to do all this due diligence were more than just a funnel for the 90% of cards that some 20-something is looking at and deciding if it's a pristine or whatever, because there's a missed opportunity to authenticate, to use common sense, to do things that really provide more comfort and more safety to the hobby. Right now it's still the Wild West when it comes to all this grading and getting stuff around and what gets graded and what doesn't get graded, and is it a millimeter short of whatever, and if you repair a card, is that okay or not okay? Because ultimately, the way you have the card, if you got a, let's just say if there was a creased card and there was a technology to take a crease out of a card, is there anything wrong with that? I mean, you're sending to the grading card company a card that's no longer creased, however you did it. You know what I'm saying? I'm making it up, but I'm saying, if I love the card and it's no longer creased, it's a perfect card. How do I care how it got that way? But of course, counterfeiting is a different animal completely, because it's not the card anymore. It's fake cards. Resealing is a whole different thing, in my opinion. And again, I've not thought these through. I'm just saying, for me, because late at night, I'm obviously taking creases out of cards. Oh my goodness. How did we get down? Dan, why do you let the whole podcast go off the rails? When Alex starts going on to something crazy, rein him back in.
Oh man, that's
Dave,
so fun.
You know by now that I cannot rein in this podcast, no matter how much I try.
Yeah, that's
what
a good
about
point.
You, Dan? Are you Dan? Are you a graded card guy, or do you keep your stuff raw as well?
The vast majority of my stuff is raw. A few things I've graded myself. I had my trophy cards graded, and then like my Stadium Challenge Deoxys, a couple of other things, and there's a few things I bought graded. For a while I started collecting PSA 10 Vaporeons. It's my favorite Pokemon, but I started on that before the 2016 spike. So they were obviously a lot cheaper back then. And I've bought one or two occasionally now, but just the fact that the ones that I'm missing are so much more expensive now to get in tens, I'd rather be putting that money towards getting other cards that I'm missing. Like when it was saying if I put a couple $100 towards a PSA 10 Vaporeon, that's fine. But now it's like, to get the highest end stuff, I need to put a couple of thousand towards it. I'd much rather just be buying the cards on that. The only other big thing I do have is I have DJ Gigabyte in PSA 10 Unknowns. That's a cool little thing I got. I was happy with that one. But the vast majority of my stuff is all still raw.
Gotcha.
Alex, what so just some quick things. What is your favorite cheat meal?
It's got to be pizza, man. I can knock down a pizza.
Pizza is the very best food that's ever been created, and people would not believe this, and it's really a sad commentary on why I'm not as healthy as I should be. I eat pizza minimum 5 out of 7 nights a week. So that's the God's honest truth. Around here we have a tremendous Chicago deep dish type of place. And so I put in 4 meats inside it. I put in the ham and the bacon and the whatever and the all the good stuff, and then and you just pile that stuff up and you sit there and you just let it all dribble down your thing, and then you ask your wife to wash your shirt because it spills all over you because you don't want to mess up your favorite shirt.
I want your secret. How do you still look as good as you do eating pizza 5 nights a week? I want to do that.
I know. I do an unintentional intermittent fasting is essentially what I do. And I don't look good, but I appreciate you saying it. But I don't eat typically until dinner. And so it allows the consumption of a huge amount of calories only to be happening on 1/3 of the day. So that's at least allowed me. And then 5 days a week in the gym, where I guilt myself to do whatever I can just to try to maintain some metabolic underlying activity. Are you still a gym buff?
I was going to say, David, the built-in gym in your house doesn't hurt to keep yourself in good shape.
I know. Well, you know what? I had to leave. I don't use the built-in gym because all of the kids now being kicked out on their behinds means no one can spot me. So I have to go to lift the heavy weights at the gym where I can still act like I'm 20-something like an idiot. And then I come home and I'm in total pain for the next month because when you're trying to push up 100-pound dumbbells by yourself, no spot, it's not fun. But my dad's the one lesson my dad who passed away last December, a little over a year ago. And the one thing he taught me, most important lesson is pain is all in your mind. It means you woke up in the morning. If you have pain, you got out of that bed. And so that's all good. So I don't care about pain. I just run right through it and do my thing. So Alex, you gym wise, you still going? Are you still making the time to take care of yourself in that way?
Absolutely. 100-pound dumbbells though. I mean, I struggle with those. So that's impressive. Yeah, I mean, I used to, I grew up, I played sports my whole life. I played, hockey and soccer. And then when I was older, I started fighting and I did mixed martial arts for a while. So I always stay in shape. I always try to diet well. These days, I mostly like you. I just try to get in the gym, 5 days a week. And then some weeks I'll get up and I'll train at night, in the mixed martial arts gym. I'll go roll or spar or something, but it's not a regular thing. And, I'm one of those people I try to have a livable type style of, working out and eating. It's not like some kind of crazy, crazy diet or crazy, plan I'm on or anything like that. I just try to stay healthy, try to stay in shape and try to eat a good amount of what I want. And that's kind of how I keep it.
Which is really smart. I mean, that's the one thing I've never learned in my life, and it's been hell forever, is moderation. I don't have a moderate zone. It's not my brain. And so it's all or nothing at any given time. And it takes a toll. So I always have so much respect for the wisdom of moderation and everything. I I'm so jealous of the whole MMA thing. I don't have any lungs. That's the one thing I was not. My parents, I think, secondhand smoke or something. So I have damaged lungs, and so I can never cardio the way that I would want to. So it limits what I love to do, and it limits the fact of what weight I could take off and whatever, just because it's all a part of it. But I would love to be in that gym, rolling and sparring and doing the MMA stuff. So even at my advanced age, I could one blow or rear naked choke out one of my haters every day of the week. And you guys know who you are. You take that hate and you set it aside, because I swear to goodness that I will have Alex train me, and I will scar your butt under the whole thing with it if it has to happen. Yeah, I know. What can I tell you? Alex, what's the best? Oh, no, I can't ask you that yet. I have one more thing. So, Alex, what's the deal with One Piece? That was an interesting video where you basically said, "Hey, I called it right," and half the stuff you said at the end was stuff that Dan is always articulating about why the gameplay is maybe more important than anything else in the success of the ultimate long-term success of a game. So what's the deal with One Piece, and is it going to continue? And do you want to tell our audience what it is? And then Dan, he loves to weigh in. Let me tell you, now Dan hasn't said 3 words, but when I bring up anything other than Pokemon, I'm just going to shut up now and let him roll in. Okay, go ahead, Alex. What do you got?
I'm more anxious to hear what he has to say, because I'm no One Piece expert. It's just one of those things to where I'm kind of like you. I'm not a Japanese collector. I'm not a foreign language collector. And so, in the last couple of years, I guess a year or so, when Japanese really took off in Pokemon, and then people started to move on to the Korean and the Chinese, I didn't jump on those bandwagons. Like, it's one of those things where people were like, well, look at all this money you could make. It's like, okay, well, you can do a lot of things in life and make money. I don't want to go do things I don't enjoy or don't believe in. And so, like, I just, it wasn't my thing. And then, Lorcana was popping up, and, I didn't like a lot of the things that were going around with Lorcana. I kind of figured something like this was going to happen with all the massive reprints and what they're doing. And so I didn't touch Lorcana. And then One Piece came along, and, I just happened to be at my local card shop, and, I've been going there since 2016 or 15 or so. And, it's been the same manager ever since. And he started talking to me about it. He said, "Alex, you need to look into this." I'm like, "Well, what is it?" He's just like, "Man, I mean, have you never heard of One Piece?" I'm like, "No." And he just started telling me all the anime and the IP and everything. And he started telling me, he goes, "Our player base in here doubles anything we see in Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, anything right now." And he goes, "We're selling more singles of this in shop than Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or any other card game we sell. Like, this is here to stay." And so I looked into it, and I took his advice, and I started moving to One Piece. And every set that came out, I just bought into One Piece every time. And, it turned out right. It's just one of those things. I'm no expert. It just, I listened to someone and listened, and I looked around and tried to research online as much as I could, and then made the play. But I think what separates it, I truly believe it's got a bigger player base. And it's not one of those things. It doesn't feel like a MetaZoo or like a Flesh and Blood, or it doesn't feel like one of those games where you have large content creators promoting it and hyping it up and talking about the dollars and cents and finances behind it. You don't see as much of that. More of the One Piece stuff you see, it's about the gameplay, it's about the cards, the art, or the pools, and it just felt different to me, and that's what kind of told me, like, this is more the right direction. Because when a set comes out or a game comes out and it's all about the finances, usually that's it's usually time to run. It's not that there's not plays in the short term, but usually in the long term those fizzle out. And that's what I just kind of believe in One Piece, because of those reasons. But I know I'm sure Dan knows a lot more about it than me, probably.
Well, so I haven't bought or opened any One Piece, but I see tournaments and stuff happening all the time. I see so many people talking about just how fun it is to play. And then when I was over in Japan for Worlds, the amount of One Piece hype going on was crazy. I mean, obviously in Yokohama where we were, it was all decked out for Pokemon because of Worlds. But then we went around to a bit more of Tokyo, into Shibuya, stuff like that. One Piece was everywhere, and there was even there was a One Piece store. I don't know if it was just a pop-up store for a new set, but it was just a one-piece TCG store that was like a main storefront, and the lines out the store were unbelievable. It was the kind of thing where you see it when it's, which I guess it's when you see like the old news articles and stuff of Pokemon in the 90s of how hyped people were for getting this. And like you say, it does need to be focused on the game. I've always said that. And One Piece 100% seems to be that. That's what they're doing there. It's the gameplay is good, and they've got a collector aspect to it, but that's not the focus. And it's just drawing in all the right people. Flesh and Blood, I know, has moved more to that. I know you were right about when Flesh and Blood first came out, it was like Alpha Investments and stuff got involved, and it was all talk about investment. But Flesh and Blood have made a conscious effort to move away from that. They even they stopped doing first edition because so many people were buying up their first edition runs to invest in and keep the sealed product, and it meant that their player base couldn't get the cards in time for tournaments. So Flesh and Blood actually stopped first edition just because they were trying to deter investors away from the later runs. I know you mentioned Lorcana. I've spoken a lot about Lorcana on this with David, and I run another Lorcana podcast. But Lorcana's gameplay is great. The way that they're releasing the sets is great for gameplay. Obviously, short-term investment would have been terrible but they always said they were going to reprint a lot of it. They were going to try and get it into people's hands. Long-term investment, I think, could have been fine, but I think Ravensburger are just doing a really terrible job of handling Lorcana. I think there's no urgency for them to try and get the game up and running as like a good tournament structure, and I think that's honestly, people are getting sick of it already. People just aren't willing to make this commitment because it seems like Ravensburger aren't giving us that commitment. Honestly, in terms of other games, I'm excited for Star Wars Unlimited. Not as any sort of investment, but as a player and collector, that's what I'm waiting for. I'm just waiting for that drop in March. That's where all of my non-Pokemon hype is going at the moment, is waiting for that.
What about the new Dragon Ball Super? Anything there?
Dragon Ball's never really interested me. I've heard about it. I've heard it's good. Same as with Digimon. I've heard it's a really good game, but it's just never one that's interested me. When I'm looking to collect or play, it needs to be an IP that I have some sort of interest in. Or with like the older dead CCGs, it can just be, if it's kind of a quirky game, I can get into it. But with something new where it's releasing like this, it needs to hit me on multiple fronts. It needs to be, the cards need to look good, but I also need to be invested in the IP, and the gameplay needs to be fun if it's going to be one that I play. And Star Wars Unlimited, fingers crossed it's hitting all of those. I've played the game, I've demoed the game is great, the cards look great, I like Star Wars, they just need to not screw up the release of it.
What about One Piece? For those that don't know the game, I know nothing about the game. What makes it, why are kids lining up outside of the store to buy it? So what makes it, what's it about? And then is the fact that the kids are lining up outside the store to play it and buy it, and I know this isn't Pokemon, but I don't care. It's called Coffee Talks. Don't come on here and figure out you're going to judge us because we decided to go off topic today. Just walk away. Okay? And I need to calm down. I don't think I don't drink coffee. It doesn't matter. So, and I probably should, because that would make me even more hyper than I am now. Makes no sense. Stop talking. Do the podcast. Okay, my bad. Should we pick this stuff up? Should I go out in space and I'm going to spend $4,000 and I'm going to buy One Piece, the $800 box you talked about, whatever it is, that I'm hoping that someday is going to be $50,000, like a Pokemon first edition booster box, the $800 box I bought, 15 years ago. So what's the game about, Mr. Alex Nomics? And should I pick up some of these extra stuff right now? The series, I think you alluded to 6 different series out there already. Is that what I should go buy? Should I buy some boxes of series 1 to 6 before they get tampered with, counterfeited, and resealed?
Well, I'm gonna defer to Dan if he knows any more. I don't know much about the gameplay. I'll be completely honest with you. There's only so much time in a day, and I haven't put in that much effort to learn the gameplay. As far as like future value, it's all up in the air. I mean, here's the thing: like we've seen it time and time again. I'm sure you've seen it more than I have. These games go down all the time. Like, I mean, TCGs with good companies with good IPs go down all the time. And we've had, I mean, multiple Dragon Ball games have failed. Like, old Star Wars games. I mean, the old WotC Star Wars game that it went for a while, but it ended up failing. And so it takes a lot. People really don't give credit to Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic as much as they should. Like, it takes a lot for a game to stand the test of time. So I would say it's definitely on your high risk level, right? If it does make it, then yeah, I could see a lot of these boxes right now being those thousands and maybe multiple thousands of dollars of boxes in the future. It's just all about getting there. There's the amount of hype right now. I wouldn't doubt that eventually if it does start to fall away, some of these boxes could, retrace a little bit. But it's just like I said, it was kind of like right time type thing. If you're talking about the brand new stuff, like getting in the brand new sets and you can get into them at retail price or under retail price, it's probably still a good, if you can pre-release them and stuff, it's probably still a good play because it's just got so much popularity right now and there's just not enough product to go around. But as far as buying into a box, it's already $800 to $1,000. It's risky. And I'm not saying it's not going to do well, but I'm also not saying it's guaranteed type thing.
Yeah. I liked one thing that you said. I thought it was really an interesting comment and possibly that pearl of wisdom that's underneath the surface that you kind of have to go down and pull it out. So for those that are watching and are really motivated to be successful in looking for investments, one thing that Alex said was he was talking with his local card shop. And Dan has relationships with local card shops. And a lot of us know that those local card shops aren't there anymore, especially with the online being what it is. But getting some of that sort of underneath intel about what's hyped and what's popular and what's being asked about is another great suggestion towards looking at any cards or any sets or, all of a sudden, like everybody some reason is asking about Burning Shadows again, right? And so, or they want that card again. And that's another way to say maybe we should go out and buy some of those booster boxes because it looks like it's going to pick up. So, I know as I think about that, two things I have a lot of for whatever reason. I have a lot of Burning Shadows because somebody told me to buy some. But I also have just several cases, not a lot, of Vivid Voltage, which seems to never go up. In fact, looks like it's always just going to keep going down. So, but looking for those cues and saying like, you could probably buy Vivid Voltage cheaper now. And maybe it would go up, or maybe that, I think it was just a Pikachu that was in there. Those are the kinds of things that as you're looking and talking and looking for little signs of being able to buy at a cheaper point in the market, and then look for some escalation later. So,
Good Voltage is a good example. It's kind of funny. It's like, so like think about that. Cause I talk about that too, is like that or Battle Styles. It's like, even these sets where you get it wrong, right? And you pick the wrong set. You pick the Steam Siege, you pick the Crimson Invasion. It's kind of funny that in Pokemon, you still don't get punished. Like with time, those sets are still all higher than where they were at retail. It's kind of funny that, you still don't even get punished when you get it absolutely dead wrong.
Well, there was a time in which Evolutions was the most hated set in Pokemon. Like a year or two after its release, it was loose packs of Evolutions were still showing up in all of these collection boxes. A couple 2 years after the set had been out, and people were saying it's ridiculous. Everyone was just sick of Evolutions. No one wanted to open another pack, and then just all of a sudden, people start to look at the set, and the supply dries up quick because people weren't holding on to boxes and stuff. And then all of a sudden, I had some just loose Evolutions hanging around. I actually, during the pandemic at the height of it, I had two pre-release kits from Evolutions that were just sitting about, and I got rid of those for $700 a piece or something like that. It was just crazy. It was just they were there because the reason I hadn't opened them was just because there was nothing of value that I needed to pull from Evolutions. So it's just like, oh, these are $20 each. I'm just going to put them on a shelf and forget about them. Or they were actually in a box under the table, and then just all of a sudden, the supply dried up and everyone wanted it.
That's
Well,
what I
I
love
think
about
that
this
was the
stuff.
Logan
Nothing ever
Paul.
changes. Like
That was the
the set
Logan
didn't
Paul,
change.
piece of that too. A little bit of an anomaly in the sense that, you
I
know,
think the Evolution's rise was before Logan's box break.
I don't, okay, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it
Okay,
was,
it may have been after. I had
yeah,
thought Evolutions was going up earlier. Maybe it started to go up a little bit and then really spiked after Logan's box break.
yeah. And remember, you're not the price guy, so I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway on this one.
Yeah.
You're the collector and all this stuff, but what's I really, a lot of people won't listen to Alex. I'm sure trying my best to. And it's so interesting when you do because, I'm thinking as we're talking, there's this clock that's going on. Every day we move further and further away from something that was in the past, right? And so if that was Sun and Moon or if that was Sword and Shield or whatever, and you have these people that are still can afford to go back and collect them, they still can pay $300, $400, $500 a box, even to some degree for the ones that have gone up. But you've got two variables that are really at play, kind of going like this together against themselves. And one of them is what's the price of a box and can anybody afford it anymore? So, if you can afford Evolutions, I don't know what Evolutions is these days, 600 or I'm making up something, but whatever it is, you can still afford that to some degree. But how far, like the Steam Siege or whatever, might be affordable, right? I mean, and you can still go back and get it. But as we move further and further away, you almost won't see the appreciation on these boxes because the demand could fade, if that makes sense. Like you're moving. So now I want to get all the Scarlet and Violet, and I want all the Sword and Shield, and I want the Sun and Moon. But how far back do you go before either there's just too far to go or the prices are too high? Because I don't think anybody's buying a Steam Siege box because they're not opening it to build a set, and they're not opening it to put cards in a deck that they're going to play with, right? So it really has to come straight down to the collectors, if I'm not mistaken. And
Well, I think there's Steam Siege. There's one or two cards because there are a couple of different formats in which you can use cards from Steam Siege. I think Expanded maybe still hits Steam Siege, and GLC, which is a casual player only format, includes cards from that set. So all of these old sets, there are some cards that players are still going after. I will say I don't think I think you're right saying no one's opening these packs to try and get these cards, but there is still that factor of if there's I think Steam Siege has it's like Professor Sycamore or something as a full art in there, and I think that is a playable card that people still use in these formats. So even if people aren't opening the packs to get these playable cards, having playable cards in there, I think, is still something that will factor into the value, even if people aren't opening them for that reason, because it has that whole perceived, there could be a card worth this in this box.
is there any point at which an era cuts off completely? Or is it just, like the EX era? Could you say, okay, through EX era, through DP area, through XY, there are no more playable cards that you can get from those boxes?
Yes, so Expanded is black and white on, and they've said that's not going to rotate. So black and white on, I believe, is always going to be in Expanded. So it will go up and down in popularity depending on how many Expanded tournaments are being played throughout the year as opposed to Standard. I think GLC is also black and white on, with the exception that it doesn't allow you to play like the EX Pokemon and stuff. So that is where stuff like certain random hollows or those full art trainers and stuff, that's where those come into it. But that's also going to be a non-rotating format. So the sets that are in that will always be in that.
Can you define those three terms for people watching? Can you define for gameplay, standard, expanded, and GLC?
Yeah, so standard is the main way that people play Pokemon. That's your rotating format, so you use about the last 2 to 3 years worth of sets, and then about once a year, often right after Worlds, they'll do a cut and they'll say, okay, the oldest sets are no longer usable in standard, so you have to keep up to date with it. It keeps moving. Then expanded is everything from black and white on. There's a much bigger ban list for that, because obviously when you have that many cards in play, there's random decks, there's random combos that are too powerful, so they ban some cards from it. And Expanded is another format that Pokemon fully supports. They've done some expanded regionals. I think they haven't done any lately, but they do still have it open as an official format that you can run tournaments in. GLC is then Gym Leader Challenge. That's a fan-created format, so it's not an official Pokemon format. What it is you build a deck based around one type. So say you build either a grass deck, a fire deck, a water deck, something like that, and you're limited to one copy of each card, or one of each Pokemon, as opposed to the normal 4 that you're allowed in a regular Pokemon deck. It makes it's kind of similar, but it's based on EDH, Commander from Magic, where you're playing a singleton deck. So the only cards you can have more than one copy of are basic energy. Even special energy, you're limited to one copy of that. So that's that again. It's black and white on. It's non-rotating. They have a bit of a ban list. And with that one, you can't play what they call rule box Pokemon. So EXs, GXs, Vs, Radiants, anything like that, you're not allowed to play in the format. But that one is, like I say, it's a casual format. It's something that's been created by fans. It's not officially supported by Pokemon, but regionals and stuff have had side events where you play GLC, which has been really, really popular with people.
Regionals and world championships, are they standard or expanded?
Regionals can be either standard or expanded. Generally, they're standard. I don't think we've had an expanded one, possibly since the return from the pandemic, actually. There may have been one or two. Before the pandemic, there were a few expanded tournaments. Worlds has always been standard.
And so when you say regionals can be either, is it that you just know ahead of time? They just say this is the format we'll use?
Yeah, it's like when they announce the run of the season, it will tell you. You'll know months in advance if one's going to be expanded.
What does it take? Which takes a more skilled player? The more skilled player will be successful in standard or expanded?
I think in either format, it's always going to come down to the more skilled player is going to do better.
Okay, it's not one is not considered harder than the other, or I'm looking for something that would take more strategy to be victorious.
No, I don't think there's anything like that where it's one of the two is a lot more strategy based or harder. The only reason that you get more standard tournaments is obviously one, Pokemon has to support standard the most because that's what sells the new sets, because you keep rotating through these sets. And also card availability is a bit of an issue with expanded, because like when Magic had Modern and stuff, they do sets like Modern Masters where they reprint a lot of cards that are legal in Modern. If a card was printed in 2003 and they want it in a tournament, people want it for a tournament now, Magic does a lot of reprints and stuff for that kind of thing. Pokemon hasn't yet. That's not a thing that they've done. So they don't have very many expanded tournaments just because card availability is still an issue for players. It does give quite a bit of an advantage to the people who've been playing for that length of time, more just because they have the cards, they can build the decks easier.
Okay. Can you just reheat the pizza? I can't get Dan to shut up. I'll be over there in a minute. Jiminy's. All right, listen. Okay, Alex, what's the best investment in what are you going to tell our viewers right now? I was going to say fans, and then I chickened out. Fans. I can imagine. At least you look great, and so you probably have like an entire. Don't say this. Hopefully, your wife doesn't watch this stuff, but the showgirls that are watching you, and your own fangirls, and your own club of whatever those kids were back in the days of the Beatles. Alex, what's the best investment in Pokemon right now? What should I have to spend some money and go buy something now to really make sure my future is solidified? What should I be looking to buy?
If here, I'll answer it. If I were to go have to buy something, I really like that later part of the Sword and Shield era. I mean, I think any of those boxes or any of those alt art sets are going to do really well. Like, the Chilling Reigns, the Fusion Strikes, the Brilliant Stars, Silver Tempest Lost Origin, Astral Radiance. Although, I mean, Crown Zenith right now for that reprint, it's so cheap. I mean, I just think they're just such fan favorites. Everyone loved to open them. Everyone, the big hits in those sets are Pokemon that people, really seek after. They got the Lugias and the Gengars and Charizards and Giratinas and, Mews and all that. Like, it's just they have kind of all the building blocks in place to do well in the future. That's where a ton of people entered the hobby and have so much memories of. And I just have to think people are going to continuously want to go back and collect and open those boxes for years to come. Not like you said, eventually they'll probably hit price points so high that stops. But I think they have a long way to go. So that's what I would say.
And what about this idea of new characters being introduced in the game? Does the hobby risk the fact that eventually there's so many new names and new characters that resonate with the newer, younger players that they're not going back and looking for the Flareons and Jolteons and I want to say Charizards, but whatever. And so the things that you think of today as Chilling Reign in this era may not be as good because the new ones are looking. I don't know the card names. I'd love to throw in a couple, Decidueye or I don't know any names, but they're looking for these new things that are, Iron Moth. What is an Iron Moth? Or so is that a possibility that it all could fall the other way or do you think they'll always keep this core cast of characters that will kind of carry it through?
Yeah, I think exactly that. I think there'll be that core. I think each era it'll have its standout characters that kind of stand the test of time. And then, unfortunately, as much as we love a lot of the Pokemon, I think a lot of them just do kind of get forgotten in time, or they'll throw them in a set here and there, but they won't be very sought after. And I think each era has that. I mean, I think every era kind of has a few Pokemon that stand the test of time and they keep getting printed in different sets and they keep getting put at top rarity levels. But I mean, we were said so many now, like you said, there's just too many to really care about. You can't care about every single one, but I think there'll always be some that stand the test of time.
Okay. I know we're running out of time. About this time, usually Dan starts yelling about having the recording shut down. We got about 8 minutes left. So instead of cutting it close and having him have another nervous breakdown, which has to do with last night and something that went wrong with the wife or the dogs or something in the house, Dan, you still have all my stuff packed away. Don't lose it or get anybody to break in. Alex, Tell us what you want to say as closing comments about Nostalgia Nomics, your podcast. Give yourself a marketing minute or two for the people that are watching.
I'll use that time to just tell you guys, I mean, thanks for everything you guys do for the hobby. I mean, I've known who both of you are ever since I've got back in pretty much when I made my first E4 account. And, I just followed everyone and tried to just was learning as much as possible. And, you guys have always been kind of just two, people in the hobby that are kind of like need to know type stuff. I mean, Dan as well as all the knowledge, and then you with having basically the best Pokemon collection out there. I mean, I'm sure anyone deep into Pokemon knows who you guys are. And it was just, it was a real honor to be on here and talk to you guys on this podcast. And so I wanted to say that. And other than that, I mean, if you don't know where to follow me, it's Nostalgia Nomics on YouTube. And I got some other social medias, but they're not too big. So that's pretty much it. And had a great time.
I'll make sure everything of Alex's is all linked in the description of the video so everyone can go down there and check out everything. And who knows, at some point, maybe myself or David or both of us will pop up on a live stream over on your channel at some point.
Anytime.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's no expectations, Alex. Why anybody would have me on at this point? At the, basically just want to fade away into the abyss. But we appreciate you being on. It's nice that we can have really more up and comers on. Dan and I being the old staid folks that are kind of at the end of our YouTube careers, and so. Tell a friend about Alex's podcasts. Require and demand more of Alex. Comment and say, Alex, what are you doing, man? Give me more. Give me more. I want more. I want your top 10 investments right now. I want more definitive. And then make sure he puts a disclaimer in just to protect his butt, because as we know, this is a tough world. But we're impressed and we're jealous of your progress. I'm a financial advisor, and I'm not even doing what you're doing. So, Dan, after talking with Josh Archibald of Ye Old Card Shop last night, I might have to put a 10 or 15-minute investment segment in to grab a few of Alex's people that is in a counter views. Pretty much we'll have a 6-hour podcast.
You don't have enough sections in our podcast.
I know. I don't care. We're growing at the pace of a dead snail, and I don't eat snails. What are those things called? What are snails?
Escargot.
Escargot.
Yeah. So, and we, you can't even. They're not even edible. What we're doing. So, which I probably need to go take some edibles right now. I don't do that, kids. Stay away from the stuff. Okay, I'm done. But we appreciate you being on. Do have us on sometime. It's the least you can do. I threw you a lot of softball curveballs today. Don't ever expect that again. If I come on your podcast, we're going full blow. We'll be brawling in the squared octagon. And I don't care what you think about it because it'll be virtual, so you can't really hurt me. It's been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed it, and Dan has enjoyed it. He hasn't spoken as much. Sometimes when he's got someone like you that he envies because of your exposure, he gets very quiet, and that's all right. That's just a goal we have, both of us. So
I
look forward to it. It's fun to just listen to some different stuff for once.
Yeah, I look forward to more combos, and yeah, definitely next time we talk, you can throw all the hardball stuff you wanted to throw at me. We'll do that.
Okay, good. I have to keep the audience looking for more. That's all I can say. So, all right, I'm tuning out while Dan says his goodbyes. Alex, thank you very much. I'm raising my hand. Dan, finish it up.
Yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed. Hopefully you'll join us again in probably about a week for another Coffee Talks. And if you have other guests you would like to see on the podcast, be sure to let us know who you want on, and then be sure to go and let those people know that you want them to come on our podcast, because we have no sway in getting people on here, really. And yeah, that is about it from us for today. So I'll see you guys again next time.
Thanks for listening to Coffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, featuring music by More Than Never and artwork by Laura Norton. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to have a